I'm Joey.
I'm Jason.
And this is Metal
Monster
Review. Today we're going to talk about the 1957 Hammer horror film, The Curse of Frankenstein. It stars Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. And this is kind of interesting here because this was a remake, Hammer's interpretation of the 1931 Universal story of Frankenstein. Now, in regards to this, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing have always been like a dynamic duo in horror. A lot of times, if you see one, you'll see the other. But this is the first time that these two actually worked together, where Christopher Lee actually had his only appearance playing the Frankenstein monster, whereas Peter Cushing has played Dr. Frankenstein in several films. And if you're not familiar with Hammer horror, let me tell you just something briefly about them. It was a British-based movie company and studios. They used to use these really cool gothic atmospheres. So when you watch these movies, they were kind of almost set up in the time of like the 1700s, 1600s, and where you see this really awesome gothic atmosphere. So you have the authentic wardrobes that were made to set up like that, different castles and everything. They're really entertaining to watch. They're in color. They've got blood, beautiful women, and it's just entertaining all around. But I'm getting off topic about this now, so let's talk about the plot of the movie. Jason, would you like to tell us?
Yeah, this movie, when it starts out, Dr. Victor Frankenstein's incarcerated. They have him in like a little dungeon prison, and there's a priest there to give him his last rites. And he tries to tell the priest his side of the story, and that's how the movie starts. And it goes back to him as a child, when his mother died, and all the Frankenstein inheritance got turned to him.
Yes, he became the Baron. His father died some years earlier. His mother passed away. Now he is the Baron of the Frankenstein family. So as he just mentioned a moment ago, the movie set up, he's in prison, and they're looking to execute him to find out, hey, what happened here? Because there were some really grisly things that happened here. Him and his tutor at the time were working together for some years. And, being as that he's the Baron now, he hired a tutor, hired a really intelligent man who's teaching him about, chemistry and science and anatomy. And he decides that they're going to work together and create experiments. So what they did was they end up creating a new way to bring back a dead dog to life. So Dr. Frankenstein decides, hey, I'm going to take us one step further. We're going to make this revolutionary, and we're going to create life itself from dead parts.
And his assistant, Paul, he had, was totally against it. He didn't want nothing to do with it. He's telling him this is wrong and all that, but Victor he didn't give a shit. He wanted to do what he wanted to do.
Exactly. I mean, he came up with this idea. It's like, look, they found that there was somebody who was executed there by a hanging. They're like, well, here's a good starting point here for a foundation. We'll use the bodies. And then they found a way that he actually went into town and just like, hey, I'll be back in 2 days. And then he brings back just a set of hands that he bought from somebody. And it turns out it was like from a renowned musician.
And a real cool thing about when you mentioned when they cut the hugging man down for the corpse, and Paul, his assistant Paul, was like, well, the face is, the birds got to it and picked it. And Victor's like, I don't need the head anyway. It just cuts it off.
Yeah, like nonchalantly, it's like, the hell with the head, and it's gone.
I mean, today, you might not think nothing of it, but this movie was made in 1957.
Yes. So people were probably freaked out by that for sure. And like I said, this was a colorized version here. So, I mean, you do see some blood, and it's really entertaining to see how they did these effects and everything like that. And then when you later see Christopher Lee's incarnation as the Frankenstein monster, it's a pretty cool reveal. It really is. But one scene that kind of makes me think here that I really enjoyed is that when they're talking to him, it's like, well, now you need a brain for your creation. You need a brain for the creature. And he just kind of has a sinister look on his face. Don't worry, I'll get it. And he's having over for dinner his another renowned professor, very intelligent man. And he ends up killing the professor. He had this whole thing plotted out to kill the professor, to take his brain and use it for his own creation.
Oh, and this the way he does it, the professor wants to go to bed. I'll take you to your room, and then there's a painting, and he wants to show the professor this painting. Those are looking at it. Oh, you gotta step back farther to enjoy it. And the professor, okay. Then all of a sudden, Victor, Professor, look out!
It just shoves him right off the goddamn steps and everything, and the professor falls. So he had this whole thing plotted out, shows up at the funeral and everything, just had this whole thing plotted out. And then his assistant, Paul, catches him pretty much trying to, literally removing the brain from one of the vaults in the middle of the night.
He has no remorse.
None.
And Victor's like, it's no use to him anymore. And Paul starts arguing with them, and they get in a little scuffle, and he's worried about the goddamn brain. He's like, you damaged the brain! And then it smacks against the wall.
Yeah, it turns into a fight. The brain gets damaged. So therefore, Dr. Frankenstein puts the damaged brain into the monster. Now the monster is more aggressive, ends up escaping from his lab, kind of runs amok throughout the wooded area in the country. Ends up killing some people, and then you have to think to yourself, well, would the creature have been calmer if it didn't have the damaged brain in there, or what really caused this?
But guess what? Dr. Victor can fix that.
Yes.
And that's what he does. He says, you damaged the brain. And when he was going to repair the brain, he has the goddamn brain out picking glass out of it. Remember
yes,
that?
I do.
That
He's picking it out.
It was so cool. He's just picking glass out of this brain.
And that's something you don't see in a Frankenstein movie because, hey, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. So he was going to pick out every little shard of glass out of here from the broken jar that the brain was kept in originally. But one thing I do want to note in this is I love Peter Cushing's performance.
Oh, yeah. I know you are all probably familiar with the Universal Dr. Victor Frankenstein, but in this one, he's so evil and sinister. He gets so obsessed with his work, and he'll go to any extreme to get what he wants.
And that's a fact. So, you just watch it. I love his performance in this because he's very arrogant, he's very sinister, but at the same time, you can't wait to see what his next move is. You know what I mean?
He was so sinister that he was, which I guess it was normal back then, but he was going to marry his cousin.
Yes, they had an arranged marriage throughout the family, and I guess that's another part of the plot we kind of overlooked, so our fault. But what's going on here is years later, after his mother dies, his father dies, he becomes the Baron. He's still like a teenager. Well, he has a cousin here from, and years go by. Well, she shows up. Apparently there was an arranged marriage for them when she reaches a certain age or whatever. So he's the Baron and she's the Baroness. So while he's doing all these experiments in his own home, hey, she shows up. That kind of throws a wrench in the works of everything that he does because he's trying to keep everything a secret. And he has to kind of just keep her away. So she shows up with her bags. Hey, I'm here to live here now. Didn't you get my letter from a couple weeks ago? And it's like, I have to go and leave for a few days. I'll see you when I get back. And not many questions really answered because at that time, she's like, she had nowhere to go.
No. And then there's another little plot twist that even show how this evil this Victor is. He's banging his little housemaid.
Yeah, he's having an affair with the maid, promised to marry her, and then all of a sudden his new arranged marriage wife shows up in the picture. She's unhappy, and he ends up having the maid killed. And I won't divulge how it happened. See the movie for yourself, but you just see really how evil Peter Cushing can play here.
Yeah, it's a real big difference when you watch the Universal interpretation of this and the Hammer. He's just pure evil.
but it's definitely worth a watch. Do you have anything else to add?
Oh, we could go on for hours talking about
This
it. Like I
is
said,
true.
I don't want to give away the whole.
This is true. I don't want to
ruin the
spoil it
movie,
for anybody who might want to sit down and watch this. So.
But it's definitely. I mean, you're not going to see hardcore blood and guts, but like I mentioned before, for the time this movie came out, back then they didn't believe in showing severed hands and body parts like that, and you get this in this movie. So you get some pretty cool practical effects from 1957.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And just knowing that you're seeing this in color probably blew a lot of people's minds at that time, too, because they were used to, black and white horror. And now here's something, in Technicolor. Woo. You know what I mean? But it's really well done. And like I said, I love the gothic atmosphere with the sets and everything and the wardrobes. And if you've never seen, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, they really work well together. So it's something worth a watch.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool flick. So, what's your guys' favorite Hammer film? I know I haven't seen them all, and it's embarrassing, but let me know. What's your favorite Hammer film? Maybe I can check it out.
And you know what? If you've never seen any Hammer ones, this would be a good one to start with, for sure. I'm Joey.
I'm Jason.
And this is Metal
Monster
Review.